Good morning, everyone. My name is Dominic Knoll. I'm the CEO at the World Trade Center here, and it's a pleasure to welcome you on behalf of all of our members and the board and the advisory board of the World Trade Center. I know it's not easy to come on a Monday morning because there's many other things that are going on, but we're very, very excited that you're here as well as the speaker is here. But before we start, please, that's a working lunch, so just go ahead and eat and listen a little bit to my funny accent. I would like to thank especially the people who helped us to organize this, Jones Walker as being a premier sponsor with us for this series, as well as Intralux and the Port of New Orleans, who sponsored this luncheon today as well. Also, I would like to recognize a couple of people, especially David Kearney, who's my boss and chairman sitting here in front, as well as the whole board of the World Trade Center and the advisory board, and also the staff of the World Trade Center who made this luncheon today possible. So let's give them a round of applause. I'm very excited about this speaker series because it's, I think, an excellent company and an excellent representation that we have here today, and especially if you look in the, big picture with world population growing, food demand is up. Many of you are in agriculture, the same as in agriculture. I mean, if you look at the different levels, what's needed, there is certainly needed for proteins, for food, and therefore I'm very, very happy that we're going to have Hal here from Tyson Food. Tyson Food, I don't think it needs an introduction, but I put a couple key points out there that you might find interesting, and I hope I don't steal your thunder, but I got a couple of statistics. They're the world's second largest processor of chicken, beef, and pork. They're the largest meat processor in the world currently. They're one of the 100 largest companies in the United States, employing roughly about 110,000 people. And if you ask, well, how much is that in terms of processed chickens, cattle, and pigs, you talk about 42 million chickens, 170,000 cattle, and 350,000 pigs per week that they process. So I mean, it's a very exciting company to have here with us this morning. They also, they're headquartered in our neighbor state, and so there's many business ties that we spoke earlier with Louisiana, with the port of just shipping through with the port of New Orleans, but also several other business ventures that they are involved with the Louisiana companies. So let me now go ahead and introduce Hal Copper. He's you have the extensive bio in front of you, so you can read there closer, but he is currently the Executive Vice President of Strategy and New Ventures. So we're very, very happy to have him here. He's the lead person overseeing the strategic planning activities, including M&As. And if you have recently looked at the Wall Street Journal, you probably have seen that Tyson acquired Hillshire Brands. Many of you familiar when you go to groceries on a day-to-day shopping trip, so to speak. He's, like I said, he was very instrumental in doing so. Before that, he was the group vice president of R&D, logistics, and strategy. He oversaw food safety, quality, information systems, animal well-being, and so on and so on. Before that, he came to Tyson in 2001, being Tyson having acquired IBP, where he worked as a senior vice president. And before that, he has a extensive background in the seafood industry, where he was the chief executive officer and the president of the Iceland Seafood Corporation. But more importantly, he told me earlier that if things would have turned out a little bit differently with his dad, he would now be a citizen from Louisiana, because his dad was stationed here, but then moved to Atlanta, and then from there he's now in Arkansas. But please, ladies and gentlemen, now let's join me, please, in welcoming our current speaker, Harold Carpert.
Well, good morning. It's great to be with you. And if you haven't noticed already, there's a difference in height between Nicholas and myself. I'd asked for a box to stand on, but somehow that was overlooked. So I'll just move these things. I used to stand. My dad was in the restaurant business, so back then when I was working in that, we had these 3-compartment sinks. We didn't even have automatic dishwashers. I know I don't look that old, but I am. But we had those, and I wasn't tall enough to reach into the sinks, so I'd stand on Coca-Cola crates to wash dishes. So I thought of that when I followed Nicholas up here. I wish I had a way to stand on a Coke crate to come behind him. I do have to put a little finer point on something Nicholas said a moment ago. We have not completed the acquisition of Hillshire. I'll talk about that a little bit as we go forward, but we certainly hope to have that done before too much longer. Nicholas gave you my background. I feel like luckiest guy in the world. I love what I do. I love the company I work for, and I've got a dream job, and that is thinking about and working toward the future all the time. And it couldn't be a more fulfilling and exciting position. But I want to tell you about Tyson Foods and to tell you a little bit more about us. Now, Nicholas said a little bit, but I've got a brief video, and I promise it is brief. It's only about 2.5 minutes, so I don't think you'll have to suffer through much here. But I'm going to start this, if I can push the correct button, and tell you a little bit about Tyson.
My grandfather had a truck, and he was hauling fruits and vegetables in northwest Arkansas. He saw an opportunity to buy a load of live chickens and take them to Chicago and Kansas City. He bought the live chickens, took them to Chicago. We've been in the food production business ever since.
That's John Tyson, our chairman.
There's a lot of history within this company, and there's a lot of pride that goes way back to the very beginnings of where we evolved from.
Tyson is so much more than a chicken company. We're a beef company, a pork company.
We do pizza toppings, we do tortillas.
We truly are a global multi-protein company. We have operations in 4 countries and sales offices across the world.
Big is not necessarily a bad thing. Big means that we have the resources to do things right.
A lot of times Tyson is the largest operation in a community. So, we feel the responsibility to try to do as much as we can to give back in the communities in which we work and live.
Since 2000, we've donated over 90 million pounds of protein to various food banks throughout the U.S.
We take pride in feeding families. That's who we are, that's what we do.
It's a few things that are always consistent with our products, and that's the quality and the safety, but it's always about trying to try new things.
We do a lot of research on what are the upcoming flavors, what are those emerging flavors.
Innovation is key to any company. As Donnie Smith, our CEO,
Well, you know what? That gets a lot of the story told. So I'm going to try to fill in some of the gaps here and really to talk about who we are. And we're founded in 1935. You heard John, our chairman, 3rd generation Tyson in the business, talk about his grandfather having the truck of chickens and really finding an opportunity to move chickens, live chickens, into the Kansas City, Chicago markets. And it was a well-run, small, family-operated business. And I think part of why we have the success we have today is the roots and heritage of this business came from small family farming and understanding the challenges that a small business person has. During the war, early years of the business, food rationing was becoming an everyday reality. Poultry, however, was not rationed during the war, and demand grew rapidly. And in the 60s, under the direction of John Tyson's son, Don, the company went public. So I want to talk a little bit more about who we are, and I'm going to just go ahead and advance these slides rather than give you death by advancing pages of the deck here. But today, who we are today, we're 115,000 team members, 11,000 farmers, 130 countries. Over the past 75 or so years, we've continued to grow. Today, we have this large group of team members all over the world. And Nicholas talked with you about the fact that we do chicken, cattle, hogs. It's not just chicken, cattle, and hogs. We also, you might be surprised to know, we do soups and sauces. We make macaroni and cheese that's in large distribution in food service. We make pizza crust. We make dough balls. We make tortillas. And a lot of things that are outside of the core protein, but the common denominator is food. And we're proud of our values, we're proud of how we work, and we work hard to stay true to those values. For us, it's not enough just to be in a money-making enterprise and trying to do our best every day. It's very important that we are a part of the community in which we operate, and the community views us not just as a source for jobs, but a resource within the community, good times and bad. So what we do is we work hard at making a difference, and we have as our tagline, making great food, making a difference. I think the great food is probably very easy for you to understand. We had some great food here today, and thank you whoever made the arrangements to have not just sausage, not just bacon, but both bacon and sausage. We really appreciate that, and I feel so warmly welcomed here. I can't thank you enough. So thanks for that. But that's the great food. But what about making a difference? What's that mean? You heard in the video people talking proudly about Tyson Foods donating more than 96 million pounds of food to food banks since 2000. We've deployed our Meals That Matter truck. It's a 40-foot truck that we send when there is a disaster. And from our plants, we have cooking teams and service teams that roll the moment that a disaster has hit. Might be interested to know that during Hurricane Sandy, we had a truck there. In Moore, Oklahoma, we recently served 80,000 meals in 3 weeks. And it's not just about the people who are in need in these locations. Obviously, they don't have the food or the ability to prepare their meals, but it's also critical that we're able to take care of and nurture the people who have come to help. So it's taking care of those in need and those that are there to help those in need. Today, this day, we're in Pilger, Nebraska, feeding victims and relief workers. And when we first started going with this truck, I think somebody had, I think our CEO called and was talking with the head of operations at a nearby plant and said, well, I just want to let you know, if somebody needs to take off today to go out and help out with that, it's fine. And the response was, well, you're a little late. They left 12 hours ago. They're already rolling. And they have not only food, but they've loaded up with water, and a lot of times in these disasters, there's not enough water. So they were rolling with that. Many times, we are on site before the Red Cross. And, you know, it's fulfilling to all of us to be in this business, but it is even more fulfilling to serve. And I'd say all of us take great pride in that. So let's talk about where we operate and how we operate. Our business is multi-channel, multinational, multi-protein. That's a lot of multiples, isn't it? A lot of folks don't realize the scope of our business. We currently sell into over 130 countries. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But we've got full operations in China, Mexico, India, and Brazil. And this part of our business accounts for about $5.5 billion, I think it says 5.7 up on the screen, of our overall sales. Talking a little bit about Brazil, Brazil has the natural and infrastructural resources to help feed the world. And that's a very, very important theme as we think about the future. I began my talk thinking about and speaking of the future? Well, food security, security of food supply is critical. Today in Brazil, we produce 2 million birds per week. That sounds like a lot, doesn't it? I mean, that sounds like a lot of birds. But to put that in perspective, we process 41 million birds per year here in the United States. We're growing in Brazil. We like the opportunities we see there and the opportunities for the future. I'll talk some more in China in a moment, but just to view the screen, some of you may be familiar with the term, some not, but consumer products, you surely know that. That's when you go to retail and you buy our branded product at the retail stores. Food service would be a place like this. It's where you eat food away from home. So our business mix is 43-34, and then you see the international piece. Something really nice that we like about our diversified business model is we are well balanced between food service and retail. When the economy tanked a few years ago, our food service business went down. Why did it go down? It went down because people were all trying to economize. Even people who had money felt like they needed to economize and eat out less. It was devastating for the food service industry, but those people still had to eat. All of us continue to eat. We may not have eaten out in restaurants as much, but we still ate. So with this diversified business model, what we lost on the food service side, we picked up on the consumer products or the retail side. There on the right, you see the blend of our business that's between beef, chicken, and pork. And that's really in dollar sales. So in volume, beef isn't as large as chicken, but it's because chicken is such an economical protein. So I want to just insert something here when I talk about doing business in 130 countries. We do business in 130 countries, but you heard me say we've got a physical presence with manufacturing operations in 4. So how do those goods reach these other customers? Well, if it's Mexico, if it's Canada, they get there by truck. If it's offshore, it gets there by port. And I know there's some folks here today from the Port Authority and also those logistical pieces that support the Port Authority and our customers and ourselves. And we had a little discussion with some beforehand, and I want to make sure all of you got to hear what I said to them. And it is the very high regard that Tyson Foods has for Port of New Orleans and these businesses that are integrated and work so well within the Port of New Orleans. That group used to report into me, Tyson's Transportation and Logistics Group, and I knew what the view was of Port of New Orleans then, but I wanted to check before I came here, and the grade that was volunteered was A+. And A+, we don't grade on the curve. So, when we say A+, that's a big deal. Our customers are demanding, so we have to be demanding. The beauty of working with Port of New Orleans is we don't have to demand things. You know what your customers need, you know what it takes to win and be successful, and you provide it, giving yourselves a competitive advantage. So much so that we ship 75 containers a week out of Port of New Orleans, about 3 million pounds per week, and it goes like it just happens. And I know it doesn't just happen. It happens, though, because this is such a well-oiled machine. So thanks to those of you that are in that industry and those of you that aren't in the industry, you should be really proud of what Port Authority does here in New Orleans. Go ahead and clap. Well deserved. So I'm going to talk about our U.S. operations. So there's the map, and had I not spent so much time at the beginning on this, we would have played a little trivia game with calling out the names of the cities on all that map, but I'll make it easy. We're in nearly 30 states. That includes 57 chicken plants, that's 13 beef plants, that's 9 pork plants, and almost 30 prepared foods facilities. We're really focused on our core, and you'll hear me talk and us talk a lot about our core, but we're also focused on diversifying when that makes sense for us. So as a strategy person, one reason I kind of harp on managing and growing from the core, a lot of times when you go out and work to build your business, it can take you into places that are somewhat different from what you already do, and you take your eye off the ball from what got you here. So we are always very disciplined about managing the core when we go into spaces of adjacency. and not just the core of business capabilities, but the core of integrity and business practices and how we conduct ourselves. I've already talked to you about where we are in our global markets, and these are plant locations. So multiple plant locations. I want to take a moment and talk about China. And I want to talk about China specifically because it's a big piece of our international business. Population of China, 1.3, thereabouts, billion people. And chain restaurants have been opening at a dizzying pace, one every 18 hours. That's a lot of chain restaurants to be opening. And the annual per capita consumption of chicken, in China, is about 26 pounds per person of chicken. So let's put that in relative terms. Any guess for what the per capita consumption is in the U.S. of chicken? 50? I hear 50. Anybody give me 60? Okay. It's actually 89 pounds of chicken. And so that tells you, maybe tells you what we find appealing and intriguing, amongst other things, about China. Huge population base, underpenetrated in terms of the pounds per person of consumption. So really, really big opportunity. Another thing that we're enthused about in China is that there is a growing middle class. And when middle classes emerge, we've seen it not just in the U.S., but all over the world. When middle classes emerge, they want to feel like they are living better. They may not buy a new car, they may not go out and buy a whole new wardrobe, and they sure aren't going to buy a new house. But one of the first things they do that provides the quickest gratification is eating and moving up the value chain. And people typically, as they move into middle class, are going to consume more protein. And we believe China, every indication is China is going to be that same way. So in Tyson, we're developing a Tyson premium brand that really provides and I'd say is authentic around safe and high quality chicken to our customers and satisfy consumer needs. Perhaps you've read some of news from time to time about concerns in supply of the, let's just call it the confidence that the consumer can have in supply chain in China. And consumers, particularly those with more disposable income, are looking for assurance that not only is the food nutritional, but they have confidence in the supply chain. That's what's led us to make the investment in China. We don't know everything about everything, but one thing we really do know a lot about is raising chickens and producing chickens and chicken products that people want to buy. So that's a big part of our interest in China and why we talk so enthusiastically about it. So let me talk a little bit about the challenge, and I think Nicholas touched on it briefly earlier, which was the challenge of feeding the world. That's the challenge not just for Tyson Foods, that's a challenge for all of us here. And I don't want to, get up on a soapbox or my Coca-Cola crates and speak on this, but I think we have seen that in the world, it doesn't take a lot to set off turmoil and tension. And one thing that sets off turmoil and tension pretty quickly is inadequate food and inadequate food supply. So that's going to be a concern for all of us. We all are going to become, over time, much more interested in having the most productive, the most efficient supply of food in general and protein in particular. So I want to talk a little bit here about the challenge. So you take a look, and I'm sorry about this. This is a habit I've got. I don't want to go through them step by step. But you can see the chart. Today, or in 2013, 7 billion people in the world. Population is growing 75 million people a year. Well, okay, how big is that? You talked about 1.3 billion in China. How big is 75 million a year? Well, 75 million a year is the equivalent of adding a city the size of Philadelphia weekly. And then you look down at the bottom, and it's estimated that in 40 years, the world will need 40% more food than we produce today. 100% more food than we produce today. Where's that going to come from? How are we going to do that? And we at Tyson Foods have resources to do our part to help meet that challenge, but it's going to take more than just Tyson Foods. It's going to take companies broadly in agriculture and in food to come up with innovative, fresh, new ways to feed the world. And as cliche as it might sound, our higher calling is to feed the world. That's really embedded in our culture and our core. So you think about these staggering food consumption statistics, and I've got a chart out here that if you can't see it that well from where you are, it starts at 1960 on the left, that's global food or global protein production, and we go out to 2020 on the right. I don't know of many things that you grow or raise that you can scale up that fast, but that's what we're going to have to do. And with the comment I made on a slide or two earlier, the slope is quite steep, and it's going to step up even more. So we think that the future is very bright in terms of growth. We're not worried that there won't be demand there. What we've got to do, though, is be able to satisfy demand on a global basis that will make food and protein in particular economical. And so that's where, when we talk internationally, you say, well, you're doing so well in the U.S., or you do okay in the U.S., why do you spend so much time internationally? The U.S. market is really not going to grow at that rate that the international demand will be, and we want to be there. So as we think about our growth strategy, and we updated our strategy about 2.5 years ago, and we put it into 3 buckets. The first one is Accelerate. And Accelerate is to grow our value-added chicken sales. So what's a value-added chicken sale compared to regular chicken? A regular old chicken is things that we do that's not branded, that might be in a bulk format that is not what we'd call kitchen-ready or customer convenient. So we want to upgrade that. We also want to grow our prepared foods. How do we define prepared foods? Prepared foods for us are things that are made more customer convenient, but generally things that are not chicken. Prepared foods would generally be beef, pork, or soup, sauces, and the like. And then third, grow international chicken production. I talked about that. We want to innovate. We want to innovate through products and services. The products part is easy to understand. And just like I talked about Port of New Orleans earlier, services, we believe, are an important differentiator for how we do business. Just like we can choose the port that we're going to ship from, our customers can decide what products they want to buy from whom, and the service package, call it value beyond the box, is critically important. So we're very big on focusing not just on innovation in products, but in our services and continuous improvement in our processes to figure out how to take cost out, pass a lot of that savings on through in pricing so food is more affordable. Consumer insights, we really have a dramatic change in the U.S. in that there used to be this vast middle class. You know this, the middle class is shrinking, and you've got this bifurcation. You've got the very high-end disposable income, and is it Whole Foods that's going to be here later this year? Whole Foods is going to be able to talk, I think, probably extensively about this, and I admire what Whole Foods has done. But if you think about a market, think about a market size, it's a pyramid, and at the very top of all pyramids in all markets, it's fewer potential sales in that space. So not terribly scalable, and not exactly for a company the size of Tyson, where we will be able to really realize all the production capabilities we've got. The other extreme is those that are economically either disadvantaged or have less disposable income. But the middle class, where Tyson has played the most, is shrinking. So as that middle class shrinks, we have to become a whole lot better at understanding what people want, why they buy, how they interpret value, and then innovating and designing our product offering and our services to meet those. We can no longer go on television with a national ad targeted to this vast middle class and think we're going to reach everybody. We have to have consumer insights that take what had been a couple of markets and turn those couple of markets into probably 10, 12, 15 different markets and market effectively. So then the other piece of this three-legged stool is cultivate. And we're very, very committed to developing our team members. We do hire from outside. I came through an acquisition to Tyson, but a lot of our folks that are in mid-management to senior management to upper management came up through the entry-level positions at our company. And we're very committed to providing them with the developmental opportunities that help them take on more and greater responsibilities. And so we have invested heavily, I think for our industry, probably the heaviest in terms of team member development. So you've heard me use the term core a few times, and we talk about growth from the core. So I want to just kind of put a little finish on this core theme. And what do I really mean by growth from the core? Core culture. It's maintaining our core values as we grow and never compromising those things. Doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. I don't want to get too carried away. We make mistakes, and I've joked with somebody before, sometimes with some of the mistakes we make, you'd think we are trying to find new innovative ways to make mistakes. But I would say that our intentions are right. And there are going to be times that we, as I like to call it, step on a rake. You know, if you ever step on a lawn rake and that thing comes up and hits you on the head. Well, I've stepped on a few rakes, and I never went out and sought to step on a rake and get hit on the head. But that happens to us sometimes. But it's not because we've lost our way. And it's really important that we have our North Star of who we are, what we're about, and what it means to be Tyson in the communities that we serve. So the other part of core is core business. Our core business is chicken, beef, pork, and prepared foods. We've said that we want to expand prepared foods, and that's what we're doing. But our growth from core means doing the types of things that we're already good at. We're not going to get into running an operation in a port. We're not going to go out and buy a packaging business. That's not our core. And what we know if we did that is that would distract us from our core. We'd disappoint our customers and disappoint our investors and confuse our team members. So our expertise is in safe, efficient food production. And that's what we're going to continue to do. So the recap of the growth strategy that I talked about earlier, and in the red, I'm going to go into a little more elaboration, and that's our growth strategy is really, we're going to talk about focus on prepared foods, innovative products and services, consumer insights, and talent development. So future growth. Nicholas talked about Hillshire Brands. And we're very, very excited about the potential for Hillshire as a strategic fit in our business. I'm sure some of you have heard that we're seeking to purchase this. When we considered this opportunity, we saw it as an extraordinary strategic fit. And you know what we've always said when we worked on our strategy, we wanted to have a strategy in search of an acquisition, not to find an acquisition and try to create a strategy to fit it. And with Hillshire, this is just hand in glove, a perfect fit for fulfilling our strategy. Let me tell you a little bit more about Hillshire, and I think you'll see why we're so interested in the business. There on the left, you see their brands and the categories, and hopefully most of these you're already familiar with. But look at the Hillshire brand or share position. And they are number one or number two in every category that I've got up here. And to go in and have capabilities, which we have, we've got much broader capabilities than you might see in Tyson brand at retail, but to go out and build a brand is time consuming, it's expensive, and remember what I said previously about reaching consumers. The message is no longer going and just doing a national media buy on the 6 o'clock news. You can't reach people. So you can't reach an adequate number of people. So a big part of our interest in Hillshire was fulfilling that strategy for prepared foods growth. So then what's that do? That gives us a much broader brand portfolio than we have today. There on the left, you see the Tyson brands, and you see them with that little dotted line, which before a real long time, we're hoping to erase the dotted line and that all be blended together. So what would having Hillshire do for us? It would make us the number 2 player in frozen retail in the United States, based on LTM, last 12 months sales. So I'm not giving any forward projection, so I stay out of trouble with our general counsel, our investor relations. So this is all based on a rear view mirror, not on a projection forward. And then from the financials, again, on the financials, this is last 12 months. But I think as you look at it, look at Tyson Foods on EBITDA, 5.9%, Hillshire 12.8%, and a blended basis 6.6%. So when you've got a base that is big as Tyson is today, it's really hard to move the needle a percentage point just by doing it on your core. That's why an acquisition of this nature, and not any acquisition, was so attractive to us. And I said to somebody earlier today, my friends who are not in this industry think I and everybody that I work with is crazy to work in a business that has 5.9% margins on it. It's tough work, but we love what we do, but we're always striving for more to move up the value chain. And that's a big part of what Hillshire will do for us. So before I get to questions, I'll just tell you, we see our future as very bright, a lot of great opportunities ahead of us, and we're going to remain true to that core, and we're going to not only make great food, but make a difference. And hopefully you've seen today a little bit of an insight into how we think about our business, how we think about our future, and the commitment to the communities in which we operate. So I'll be glad to take questions. Thank you. I know I didn't do such a great job, but that's almost, and I want to thank Robert for being the first guy to clap. That's almost as rousing applause as we got from the Port Authority of New Orleans. So, okay. Yes, Billy.
Okay. The question I have, I actually had three if we're not out of time, but I'll let it go. I'll let it go around the room.
Ahead, you can just
Okay.
ask away until I can't answer something.
But I saw that in your map of the world where you had dots of where Tyson has plants or things like that. There wasn't one dot in the whole continent of Africa.
That's
Do
right.
you have any confidence ever that you can do something there?
Billy, I want you to travel everywhere with me and be a straight man and set up for me. We very much want to be in Africa. We have something that is not a business investment in Africa, but more of a humanitarian investment in Rwanda. And that is not about growing chickens, but it is about growing eggs for protein to help school children have enough protein in their diet that they can be properly nourished. We're very, very interested in Africa and the continent of Africa on a long-term basis, but it is a long-term play. And Africa's 56 some odd different countries, and there's not necessarily freedom of movement between those borders. There's the East African community with the 5 countries that are Kenya and around, but it's not at the point yet where we see that as something that can really move the needle significantly. But when we look at it, we really believe we're going to have to choose wisely the right places to establish a foundation. We don't think we can wait until the party's arrived and then invite ourselves to the party. We're going to have to be in, and we're going to have to do there the types of things that we've done in the U.S., and not just be people to start a business, but people that are part of the community. So we're very interested in Africa, but it's in terms of horizons of time, it's probably out there on the greatest horizon, but that still doesn't mean we're not going to get in and establish some presence.
And thank you very much. And the second thing I had is that 3 days ago, I was very close to the continent of Africa. I was in Israel, which I found out was actually Asia. I thought it was North Africa, but I was mistaken. And we were about almost 10 days on the ground and covered the whole country. And with the statement that you made in the growth of food that's going to be necessary for the next 50 years, in seeing the agriculture in Israel, that little bitty country, do you agree that we shouldn't have a problem at all in feeding the world if we all put our heads together?
I would agree with the statement, and I agree with it aspirationally, but then there's one minor little problem with that statement, and it's those few words that you said at the end, if we all put our heads together. And generally, that's a really hard thing to do because people have fairly self-serving motivations. I don't work for Monsanto. They're not the only people that do crops and seeds that are genetically modified. But there's going to have to be some things that happen that make this really scalable. And that's one of them. That we're going to have people pulling together to feed people and feed them economically as a deciding, instead of saying, we won't do this, we won't do that, and in so doing, we really don't provide the nourishment that people need.
With your worldwide operations, you send a lot of your U.S. people out to staff your worldwide operations, or are you all developing talent in the far-flung?
What a great question. Great question, and we started out in an unsustainable model. And guess what that unsustainable model is? Sending our people out. We have to develop the talent in country. We had an expat model originally, and putting expats in country. We still need to do that from a technical expertise standpoint, but we are all about in China and all about in Brazil, all about in India, and we're well established in Mexico with this, but doing it with locals and providing them with the training and the development. We bring them to the U.S. now. We've got a gentleman, young guy, that from China that has a bright future, but we brought him to live in the U.S. and work and move through a number of positions in our business for a year to really learn how we work and how we get things done. So we'll put some, let's call them traditional experts in market, but the model for us is very much around in-country people rather than being dependent upon expats.
We had a question.
Okay, well, I'm going to let you do the pointing and I'll do the answer.
Yeah.
I got two questions. The first one is, we just passed a WRDA bill for the first time in 7 years. That's an authorization bill. There's been no appropriations set forth on it yet. That's a battle we're going to have to fight in the Appropriations Committee of the Senate and the House. We need Tyson support on this. You guys carry a big stick, and the President wants to double the U.S. exports. We can't do it without this WRDA bill. There's been a lot of work by people in this room and people in New Orleans that have accomplished this, particularly with the dredging for the ports, use of the Harbor Maintenance Fund, but we need to improve our port structure, our infrastructure throughout our country. Infrastructure investment is future economic development. It can't happen without it. And if you're harvesting 42 million chickens a year and it's 2.5 pounds of meat on each chicken, that's a lot of chicken meat, and that 89 U.S. is going to have to eat a lot more chicken in order to eat all that chicken. So you're exporting a lot. Do you look for an increase in your exports? And if that's the case, does Tyson see this issue with infrastructure that the maritime industry sees?
Well, and first of all, you said within your comment that infrastructure is a broad issue, and it's not just, and I know y'all want to boo if I say not just the port, but it's a lot of things. Roadways. There's an issue about road use taxes and things that we are dependent upon as well. So yes, we see infrastructure as a impediment or a limitation to just how much one could grow if they want to grow unbridled. So we're very interested in investment in infrastructure. I wish we carried as big a stick as people often think we do. Usually when there's a stick, we're getting whipped with it rather than the other way around. But nonetheless, Sarah Lilligren is our head of external relations, which includes governmental affairs, and I'd be happy to put you in touch with Sarah for discussion about what level of support, if any, we could lend to that.
All right, good. I'd like to get that information from you. We may be in the maritime business, but for us, infrastructure means everything from clean water to electric grid. Good infrastructure improves economic opportunity. It improves the quality of life of everyone. Quality of life. You're looking at expanding your prepared foods portion of your core business, and Hillshire, a lot of their stuff is prepared foods. Slam against prepared foods from a health standpoint. Excessive amounts of sodium, excessive amounts of sugar, and things like that. I know Tyson is very interested in the community and being a good citizen. I I'd like to get an idea about what you think about the situation and an idea about what kind of steps Tyson is undertaking to kind of alleviate these problems so that prepared foods will not be the health hazard they appear to be right now.
Great question, and the first thing we're going to do is come up with a new name for the category of foods that we sell that isn't quite so negative as prepared foods. And for us, prepared foods is not a category of things that is high sodium, high fat. The prepared is really more the things that are making them consumer convenient. We offer an array of products from lean to rich, and we believe in consumer choice. We believe that the consumer should be able to choose what they want. We believe they should be able to choose what the amount of sodium is, what the amount of fat is, and every aspect of that. So we have a broad array of products and offerings for the person that, I'd say, whatever it is that they want to include or eliminate in their diet, we've got a choice for them that meets that. So I do agree that there is a challenge in terms of providing people with the most nutritious and beneficial food, but people choose to eat what our research has shown is it's a very small percentage of the population that eats consistently in a certain way, week in, week out. Weekends, they eat differently than they do during the week. They go out to dinner. They eat differently when they go out to dinner. I had a customer tell me 25 years ago when I was trying to talk with him about the Better For You product offering, he said, "What are you thinking?" He said, none of my customers come out to dinner to feel deprived. They come out to dinner to reward themselves. So it's a very fair question, but what we have to do is provide an array of choices, and then given those choices, trust the public to make the right decision for them.
In all the areas, I don't think it's on. It's on. Okay, I'm sorry. In all the areas that you deal with, feed is the most important ingredient, and with the situation right now being using corn and certain other agricultural products to create alcohols, what are you all doing? How do you see in order to keep cost a major factor with feed down, what are you looking at doing about that?
Well, back to influencing our government, we haven't been very successful in influencing policy around the idea of using food for fuel. That's something that ultimately I think we're going to have to get more realistic about. Corn, while it works great for producing or okay for producing ethanol, there's other alternatives. But here are feed crops that are being used for fuel, and some would argue not very efficient fuel replacement at that, and there's other alternatives. We have I'd say probably expressed ourselves ad nauseum in Washington on this topic. We won't give up, but it is something that has been portrayed and has been presented in a way that it really sounds really, really green and sounds really good. But there are enlightened people in D.C., and some of them in Congress and a lot of them not, that understand that ultimately we say we're concerned about everybody, we say we're concerned about all the citizens in the U.S. This is not good for low-income people. It makes the cost of food higher for low-income people. And somehow, that's I think the message that ultimately has to get across, but we like to think we're pretty good at what we do. We must not be that great at that one because we still haven't convinced people that don't want to accept that position. But it's a big challenge.
Just a historic question. Is there any chance that when Mr. Tyson first took his truckload of chickens, he went to see Huey Long, since he was best salesman about putting a chicken in every pot? Is there any truth to that?
No, but I think he must have missed that step, but I wish he had.
Please, sir.
That's a little bit different question.
Hang on, Robert. The mic.
Thanks. What I was going to ask was, in Northwest Arkansas, there's some very, very successful companies, Tyson being one, Walmart, some trucking companies, ABF Freight and J.B. Hunt. what is it about Northwest Arkansas that it's a very small place and not a place that you would normally think of world-class companies, but there are.
Well, I can speak of 3 of those. I can't speak of ABF, but I can speak of Tyson Foods, Walmart, and J.B. Hunt. They were all led by people who had built their business from scratch, and in building those businesses from scratch, treated their people that worked for them wonderfully. And Don Tyson, I can speak of, walked the hallways, engaged everybody he saw in conversation. He was an absolute marvel to see in the plants and talking with people and engaging. It wasn't politicking. He cared about them. He cared about the people. He cared about what their concerns were, and he cared about it being a place where they would want to come to work. And then I'd say from a customer standpoint, giving people what they want. You can't be all things to everybody. Walmart is not Neiman Marcus. They don't strive to be, but kind of back to the point that I made earlier about the core and understanding what your core is and what your focus. I'd say those 3 businesses were led by phenomenal entrepreneurs who understand what they were good at, what they set out to do, and understood scalability. And it may be the water. I'm drinking lots of the water, and I hadn't gotten any better while I've been living up there. Jim?
Hal, thank you very much. I really enjoyed it. Quickly, you talk about the growth of international business, obviously something we in the port are very interested in. But there's, with Hillshire and with the domestic consumption increasing, we've seen a lot of products stay home the last year. I'm curious about domestic or U.S. production growth. Do you foresee a lot of new builds, new plants, new production in the U.S.? And if so, how do you guys make decisions on where you build those plants and where you do that production?
Okay, so yes, and I'm speaking historically, not so much prospectively, but right now there's increase in production in chicken in the U.S. And you know we're very cyclical. Price goes up, and the industry goes crazy and expands, and then prices fall. The industry, I would say, has become certainly more aware, and I'd say a lot more insightful when thinking about expansions. So there is expansion going on now, and that expansion is taking place typically where you're going to be closer for us. We never consider expansion these days on the chicken growing side where we will not be advantaged logistically relative to the feed ingredients. And you know, corn is the most expensive component of chicken. And we're just simply not going to be someplace that is not advantaged, and it's the entire view of end-to-end supply chain efficiency. So in terms of the other growth, I think that the growth in prepared foods will be very much around major population centers, not just for ourselves but others, back to that model of distribution efficiency. And it's not going to be having a plant that's in some really remote location just because you have a low hourly rate that's prevalent there. It's going to be a much more informed end-to-end analysis of what the benefit for the area is and what the cost is to produce.
Thank you. All right. Well, I think if there's no more questions, I would like to say thank you so much.
Thank you.
This was very great. With that, we come to an end of this very exciting talk and series of today, but please make sure you mark your calendars for July 17th. There we will have John Jumper, who was a 4-star general with the United States of Army Chief of Staff, as well as is now the CEO of one of the largest defense contractors. And the same day, we also going to have the CEO of the American Petroleum Institute. So, pick your favorite, but please come and join us. I said thank you so much again to our sponsors, as well as all the partners like the New Orleans Chamber, as well as also the French American Chamber, and many, many more who have contributed in outreach for this program. Thank you so much.